Great minds think. That's all I want you to contemplate right now. Great minds think. Let's talk about it.
Master the story power method to captivate your audience, improve workplace culture, and 10x your fundraising.
Scan the QR code to book your first coaching call or visit storypowercoach.com.
Master
Think storytelling's just for bedtime? Nah, it's the secret sauce for business magic. Stuck in a rut with bland pitches and yawning clients? Enter Boost Your Business with Story Power. 6 weeks of epic storytelling training. It's like leveling up in a video game but for your career. Master the art of narrative and watch connections blossom like a viral TikTok. Simple, impactful, and game-changing. Ready to transform your biz vibes? Dive in now and make storytelling your superpower.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. You know, it amazes me how the tool of hypnotism called artful vagary actually works. And if you were to measure artful vagary against, I don't know, say the Mandela effect, you would have some really clever things going on inside your head and outside your head. In fact, I watched a long expose where a guy was using a tool where the AI actually reads what your camera is seeing and tells you what it says. And what he did was compare different Chick-fil-A logos in front of his AI. And his AI was reading it out loud and pronouncing it and telling what it said and how the logos changed over time and how the one for the waffle fries bucket was different than the one on the outside of the white box. But when he asked AI to spell it, AI misspelled what it was looking at. The word chick doesn't have a K in it in the logo. It's CHIC-FIL-A. And as many times as he asked his AI to read it, to spell it out, to actually speak the letters that it saw, it kept adding a K because the K's kind of presumed. It's kind of chick is spelled with a K. It's supposed to be there. I mean, otherwise it'd be chic, right? But see, we fill in the blanks a lot of times with our own imagination, with our own expectations, with our past experiences. There's some principles, some golden rules, if you will, of how we operate as human beings in our society, the relationships that we have with one another, the jobs, the careers, the positions. Even the way we go about doing those things. There are some tried and true. I get the hiccups. I hate hiccups. Maybe somebody should scare me. No, that didn't work. Maybe the water will do it. We'll see. See, there's some tried and true things, some old wives' tales, some processes that we go through, and some of those processes are, believe it or not, nothing more than sales pitches. Seriously. There were ways to get across an idea that once you got people to repeat it often enough, everybody kind of bought into it. And if everybody bought into it, then it became common knowledge. And if it was common knowledge, then it was presumed to be true. Now, I'm not even going to take you down the rabbit trail of all of the things that our society, well, let me just throw a couple at you. Milk does a body good. Have you talked to your doctor about that? I mean, the presumption is that milk is where you get all your calcium. Not necessarily. Right? That milk is filled with protein. It is. It's also true that cow's milk is made for cows, not baby humans, and sometimes baby humans get fat on milk. And milk also sometimes has a lot of human growth hormones in it and other things that have been put into the cow to make the cow antibacterial so the cow can fight off other diseases that humans generally don't get, but now those things are in your bloodstream because they were in your food supply. So does milk do a body good? Is milk good for your bones? Is the milk mustache a good thing or a branding thing? Obey your thirst. That was a Sprite commercial for a series of, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 seasons of football and baseball. Every time the Sprite commercial came on, it said, obey your thirst. Well, is that the best thing to obey? Of all the rules and laws in the universe, is your thirst the one that makes the decisions in your life? I don't know. I guess if you're a super thirsty person, could be. I'll let you play with the meaning of super thirsty, because today's meaning of super thirsty is completely different than it was 10 years ago, and way different than it was when that commercial came out. If you ran an ad today that said obey your thirst, you might be in trouble. I'm just saying. But see, we play with the linguistics. We play with the meanings of words. We often find ourselves trapped, confined into these presumptions that what I said and what you heard have the same meaning. And often they don't. Often the thing that you said and the thing that I heard have no relationship to each other at all. If I just say to you those 3 words, great minds think, I presume that you fill it in with the same word that I would after that. Alike. Great minds think alike. How many times have we heard that phrase? Here's the thing that's baffling to me. If great minds think alike, how do you get somebody like a Bill Gates and an Elon Musk that don't agree? How do you get the founders of AI, some of which are saying this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, it's going to revolutionize the entire world, and others are saying, I wouldn't let my cat use AI? These are the creators of it. These are the people who understand what its full capability is. They've not just thought about how do I make it work today, but what will it do 2 years, 5 years, 25 years from now? What will AI look like? Will it look like the Terminator from the 1980s or something entirely different? Will AI, together with, I don't know, the Terminator and Dr. Dredd, and how many other movies have we seen? Demolition Man? How many other movies have we seen where the projection forward of what AI could do in society is not such a good thing? And then my wife and I watched one last night where they worked so hard to humanize AI. Even every single AI-driven robot looked like a human. It had the ability to cry like a human. You felt sympathy and empathy with and for these creatures? I'm not sure which one they were. And I think that was the point. See, once we can get people moving down that road, they just fill in the blank with what they're already thinking and what they're already feeling. And one of the most dangerous things as a leader is the presumption that what you think and feel is what everybody's going to think and feel. See, there's a big clash going on right now. Patrick Bet-David and his group were talking about it just the other day. He hires about 150 people at a time on a regular basis. He employs thousands, I presume, of people. And was chatting with somebody about hiring somebody, and they said, well, you really ought to let our company help you with the hiring and firing. And he said, well, how many people have you ever been in charge of at one time? The guy's like 25 people. He said, oh, well, I have 200 right now, and I need to hire up another 150 people, and I'm just curious, how's your experience with 20 people going to help me hire 150 people? But see, there's this presumption that if I've studied it at all, I know it. Part of that same conversation with Patrick and his team went on to talk about the current NBA crisis. I don't mean the basketball, not NBA, MBA, Masters in Business Administration. The challenge right now is most people are spending somewhere around $250,000 to get an MBA, but they can't get a job. And they go out there to get a job thinking that because I went to XYZ school, that just that name brand on my resume, on my certificate of completion, on my diploma, on my transcript, that alone should shoe me in for a job. And when it doesn't, they're kind of heartbroken. In fact, they're now $250,000 in debt and without a way to repay it. That's a little frustrating. See, the presumption for decades has been that if I went to school for this at this school, that school name alone means I'm getting in. Wharton, Harvard, Princeton, whatever it is. Whichever your favorite law school, medical school, whichever one it is. Once I get that certificate of completion, that diploma, it's a guarantee. And it's turning out that that's not quite the case anymore. In fact, a lot of those high-paid particular jobs from those kinds of universities are being replaced by AI. And what you hear over and over is not you're going to be replaced by AI, but you're going to be replaced by someone who knows how to use AI. And what I find fascinating with, the AI engineers, they call them AI prompt engineers. And I've had some deep discussions with a couple of them. It's not just getting the AI to perform the task. It's knowing what information to tell it to perform. One of my coaching clients is an executive from the industry of IT and engineering, where the two come together. MIT type grad, master's degree, very intelligent, very articulate, very quick on the rise with any kind of conversation around engineering, but doesn't speak human so well. That's why we're working together, to up those communication skills. And one of the things that we found is that there are some basic principles that go way back, and some things that going forward, they tend to be better when they go way back. If we just keep moving on the curve of the forward thinking, we find that we may be on the revolutionary cutting edge. We may be innovative and inventive, and that's awesome, but there's a place where those inventions and revolutions still have to be tethered to reality and humanity. I mean, think even as far back as Buck Rogers in the 21st century, the first series of Star Wars and Star Trek, where they looked at, what if we imagined, antimatter, anti-gravity, devices that would allow us to teleport from one place to another. Do you reckon when they came up with those concepts on the shows, and they could use some, video wizardry and make things appear and disappear, do you think when they came up with those ideas, they completely abandoned reality altogether, or did they use some truth, some universal principle truth that they had to look at and go, well, maybe we don't completely understand how this works right now, but we know that under these principles, if we stretch those principles far enough, we can get to this new idea. See, for every imaginative thing moving forward, it still has to come back to the basic principles and laws of the universe. I mean, I'm going to give you an example kind of from my world. Eleanor Roosevelt. It's a little quote. I had my wife write this down. She looked it up for me on Google. I don't know if she used Chat or Grok or anybody else. I'm guessing just Google. But there's a little quote from Eleanor Roosevelt you've probably heard before. Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. And small minds discuss people. Now, if you've ever been in a room full of people and all of the conversation is about other folks, it's rumors, it's gossip, it's talking about their character or their flaws or their failures or their successes, and you never get past the other people in your environment, or maybe even like a People magazine. You never really get beyond talking about the people. You're not even talking about the events, like the world events, like what's going on in history, what's going on around the world right now. How does what's happening in Panama and what's happening in Iran impact your daily life? Well, if you're not looking at those events, global impact, Canada, young man was arrested in the last week. The officer told him, I'm going to certify you mentally unwell. He's like, based on what? He's like, oh, because I can. And so they took away his freedom because someone with a degree who went to a college, who kind of thinks like everybody else who went to that college, decided he looks unwell to me. So that person called their family, then that person called the police, and then the police used cameras that were located on street poles and pulled this person over and took them to jail. Not because they did anything wrong. No. But because they didn't think like everybody else thinks. They didn't discuss like everybody else discusses. See, part of the reason that this concept that if you went to that school, you attended those classes, you got that degree from that professor, now I can trust that you know what you're talking about. You understand the subject. You've kind of been grilled on all of this. You get it. Let me give you another word for that. Indoctrination. Indoctrination. When you only learn to think alike, you're indoctrinated. That's not education. That's indoctrination. Those are different. See, here's the other challenge with that. When you can only think like everybody else around you, whether you're talking about people, you're talking about events, or you're talking about ideas, when the extent of your thinking goes to what everybody else around you is thinking, you're not really thinking. You're regurgitating. You're repeating. You might have a clever way to say it, but it's not different. And that's okay when you're talking about principles that don't change, like gravity and lift. When you're talking about ideas that have been shoved down your throat, like the idea that milk does a body good. Milk also causes protein problems in your body, where you get this phlegm in your throat and you can't figure it out. You don't really have allergies, and you haven't really been around anything to give you a stuffy nose, but you got this, you're constantly coughing up. I cut back my milk consumption. As a family, we used to go through 2 or 3 gallons a week. And when we started using coconut milk and almond milk, most of that stuff I was coughing up in my throat went away. Most of the allergies to cedars and things that are common to Texas, we don't struggle with anymore. I'm not saying they're not there, and I'm not saying the cow caused it. I'm just saying when we took that thing out of our diet on a regular basis, things for us changed. Because we're not cows. Is common thinking, is group thinking, is great minds thinking alike the ideal? Now, I brought some examples kind of from my world. This little book, Og Mandino's Greatest Salesman in the World. In fact, I have the whole box set somebody gave me as a gift, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago. May have been my dad that gave me that box set. I could be wrong. But in Og Mandino's The Greatest Salesman in the World, in the cover page, it says, this is the title page right inside the book, I will persist until I succeed. I was not delivered into this world in defeat, nor does failure course in my veins. I am not a sheep waiting to be prodded by my shepherd. I am a lion, and I refuse to talk, to walk, to sleep with sheep. The slaughterhouse of failure is not my destiny. I will persist. It says persist. There's a typo on the cover page of the book. At the top it says I will persist. At the bottom it says I will persist until I succeed. I will persist until I succeed. From the ancient scroll marked 3 in The Greatest Salesman in the World. All right, that's internal content from right inside this book. By the way, this particular book, The Greatest Salesman in the World, was published in 1968 by Bantam Books. As I'm reading through the cover page, because this book looks like it came from 1968 with old yellow pages and the whole 9 yards. But on the other title page where the copyright dated is, it also says reprinted in 1985, 74, and 88. And I'm thinking, how did you know in 1968 when you printed this book that it would be reprinted 20 years later? So this must be one of the newer versions of 1985, but it still has yellow pages. Maybe they printed it on yellow pages so you'd think it was an old book. I don't know. Page 18, he says, frightened by the tone of Hafid's voice, Erasmus stepped back and asked, is this the secret to which you have referred? Is this chest connected in some way with the promise you have yet to keep? The answer is yes to both of your questions. Erasmus passed his hand across his perspiring forehead and looked at Hafid with disbelief. What is written on those scrolls that places so much their value beyond that of diamonds? Here was the answer. All but one of these scrolls contains a principle, a law, or a fundamental truth written in a unique style to help the reader understand its meaning. To become a master in the art of sales, one must learn and practice the secret of each scroll. When one masters these principles, one has the power to accumulate all the wealth he desires. Now, also, in the beginning of this book, appreciations. The Greatest Salesman in the World is one of the most inspiring, uplifting, and motivating books I have ever read. I can well understand why it has such splendid acceptance. Norman Vincent Peale. The dedication in this book. I saw that a while ago. Where was that dedication? This book is respectfully dedicated to a great salesman, W. Clement Stone, who has blended love, compassion, and a unique system of salesmanship into living philosophy for success, which motivates and guides countless thousands of individuals each year to discover greater happiness, good mental and physical health, peace of mind, power, and wealth. Now, if you don't know who W. Clement Stone is, let me just tell you. W. Clement Stone, Norman Vincent Peale, a guy by the name of Maxwell. Yeah, John Maxwell's father. Those guys were all running buddies. But W. Clement Stone was a mentor to Jack Canfield. You know, the book, The Success Principles, the entire collection of Chicken Soup for the Soul that was written along with Mark Victor Hansen. Nearly hundreds of millions of copies of that sold. All of these guys, this positive mental attitude, this sales concept, Brian Tracy, Bob Proctor, W. Clement Stone, Robert Kiyosaki. Many of these people ran in the same very tight circles. Here's another one. Now this book, originally published 1991, The Ultimate Marketing Plan. I'm just going to give you a really quick rundown, really fast. Right here in the table of contents. Step 1, putting together the right message. Step 2, presenting your message. Step 3, picking the right targets. Step 4, proving your case. Step 5, putting your best foot forward. And then it goes on. Even down here to say, poor boy marketing strategies. Maximizing total customer value. Fueling word of mouth advertising. Now, here's the one that trips me out because this says it was published in 1991, but a reprint in 2006. 20 years ago as of this recording. Step 12, new marketing technology. Step 13, how to make the internet work for you. The book was written originally before the internet. It was republished in 2006, 20 years ago, to update you on how the principles of this book, which are probably no different than the principles of this book written in 1968, or all the ones before it. Principles. I'm trying to make a point here. I hope you'll catch on. Here's the new one. I literally just got this book. They've already been following up on with me from the organization that I ordered the book from, asking me, how did you like the book? My friends, this book is over 300 pages. Let me see how many pages this is. 331, 347. Looks like 351 pages. They called me within 10 days and said, how'd you like the book? I can read fast. I cannot consume 351 pages with everything else I have going on in less than 10 days. I just can't. I wish I could. I can't. Let me give you a little table of contents from this book. This book was published in 2026. Think Like a Billionaire, How to Sell Like Crazy, The $500,000 Learning Curve, A Wiser Investment Than Saving Stocks or Real Estate, Understand and identify your dream buyer. Wait, didn't he just say that in this book in 1991? I think he did. Create the perfect bait for your dream buyer. Capture leads and get contact details. The godfather of strategy. Traffic. Oh, there's our internet comment. The magic lantern technique. The sales conversation. How to automate and multiply. That's your new technologies. You know what hasn't changed? Nothing. The way you go about it might have changed because of the technologies, but great minds think alike, right? Or are great minds indoctrinated? I'd really love for you to answer that question. In fact, drop it right down in the comments if you're watching online. Do great minds think alike? Or do great minds step out of the box? Understand that there's some rules, laws, and principles of the universe. There are some things about humans that don't change. And work within those parameters and still stretch for innovation, for imagination. See, when everybody's indoctrinated and thinks exactly alike, there is no room for imagination. This might surprise you to know. I believe there's a God who created us all. And I know for a fact that the place that we're most like our Creator is when we imagine. When we stretch beyond the known and into the potential of the unknown. When we stay grounded in those principles that never change, and we stretch for those things that have not yet been imagined. In fact, there's a promise that says, if you, then I. And the then I says, beyond anything you can ask or imagine. What? There's something out there further out, greater than what I can even imagine? Yeah. But there's some principles. If you, then I. If you is a principle. And if you don't, then I won't. And when you get to the place where great minds that think alike only think in a certain sphere, they don't go beyond the limits of that. They don't stretch beyond that. They don't look for new ideas. See, here's the fear for great minds that don't think alike. If you have a great mind, but you don't think like everybody else, you're a threat. Great minds think consistently. Great minds think persistently, not persist. Great minds never stop thinking. They're always holding on to the principle and simultaneously reaching for what is beyond our imagination in this moment. Great minds exercise their thinking process. They take time to unplug from everything, to step out of every other bit of knowledge and just imagine for a moment. Take a journal. Really, that's all you need. Find a place of quiet in the solitude of the darkness, if you must, with a candle on a hillside where you can see thousands of miles away. Allow your imagination to focus on a problem that you're facing and not let it go until you have at least a couple of ideas. Now remember, you got to hold on to those principles. You can't let go of the principles and start living in fantasy land. But if you can tether your life to reality and stretch to imagination, you can do incredible things. And you don't have to think like everybody else to get there. There are ways to fight pain and inflammation without acetaminophen. True story, right? There are lots of them. There are ways to sleep better without putting pharmaceuticals in your body. Lots of them. There are ways to have better relationships. Lots of them. Great minds think. And I'm encouraging you to do more of it. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. There is a retreat coming up that I want you to know about. It's called the Story Power Academy Retreat. This Story Power Retreat is about focusing on your communication skills, taking them to the next level. Discover, develop, draft, deploy, and deliver some of the best stories you've ever learned. You're going to listen, create, connect, relax, and reflect around this beautiful lake scene in Granbury, Texas. It's a chance to rejuvenate and refresh and start over with some of the best training you can possibly imagine around storytelling, leadership, and communication. Join us. Get away.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at Story Power Academy.